trying to reach the finish, finding tight beats but they sounding the same. I'm thinking, when I'm swimming, will I drown in the fame, or will I slip and hit the ground and feel like all of the pain? I'm optimistic about my future, dreaming about better days. Look, I couldn't give a fuck or two. If you think I'm about to lose, you assume that it's impossible to make it. Ain't that the truth? Nah, it's further from a bitch, and you just can't break away. You just stuck inside the system while I'm breaking the game. These thoughts, they roam in my head, they think I'm better off dead. Still I believe in myself and I'll risk it till I'm ahead. I'd rather live a short life and just be happy till death than to waste all this potential and be holding my breath. Look, like, I cannot just stay here, I cannot just wait here. I feel like I'm running in circles, man, I just hate fear. I cannot just stay here, I cannot just wait here. I feel like I'm running in circles, man, I just hate fear.
Shadows on the walls of your skin, I can tell you're lying from the way you're breathing. Shadows on the walls of your sin. Why do I keep trying when I know I can't win? You crystallize, they crystallize me. Why do I keep trying when I know I can't win? I'm paralyzed, you crystallize me. You crystallize, they crystallize. Crystallize. Crystallize.
Central Market is really into Texas. Like our Gulf oysters will Rockefeller socks off into Texas. We never lose our Tempranillo into Texas. And our marinated ribs are just what the Dr. Pepper ordered. Central Market is really into Texas. If you are too, then don't mosey, run on in May 18th to 31st. Every aisle is filled with artisan foods and finds from local Texas producers. Wagyu steaks, seafood, honey, small batch ice cream, Hill Country wines, and a whole state load more. Really into Texas, really into food. Shop now at centralmarket.com.
Nerds! Dreaming of a change of pace? Let NerdWallet help you compare your way from here to there. Compare investing accounts to expand your portfolio and your horizons. Then, use NerdWallet to compare mortgage rates for a home with peace and quiet built in. Compare your way there. Find the smartest financial products for you on NerdWallet. NerdWallet Compare Inc. NMLS 1617539. NerdWallet is not an investment advisor nor an investment broker. Information is for educational purposes only.
Happy Torch Thursday. How's everyone doing wherever you are out there on the internet tonight? Lori is cooking hamburgers to go with homemade buns, and the only thing stopping me from dropping everything and fleeing to Canada is the fact that the buns probably aren't gluten-free. So I guess I'll stay here instead and suffer thinking about Lori's delicious hamburgers and teach you guys this fun project. So this is I call it a shaped assemblage ring because apparently I was feeling real fancy when I when I named the class, but all it really is it's one of my sort of semi-homemade projects because I'm gonna be using a bunch of castings from one of my favorite companies, Nina Designs. If you haven't checked them out, they've got beautiful things. They don't sell directly to the public, but they do sell directly to me, so if there's anything of theirs that you like, I'm happy to get it for you, and I will probably do another big order from them at some point soon and tempt you all with their pretty pretties on stream. So Nina Designs, also a woman-owned business who supports women in Indonesia, and they give out microloans to women business owners in third world countries, which is pretty cool. So what I basically have done is the ring is made from sheet silver, and it's a shaped ring, and this is the first shaped ring I think I've done on stream. So when you're making a shaped ring, you essentially cut it like in this shape. Now if you're going to, this is the easiest way to do it, like so. If you're going to put a bunch of stuff on it, you don't even need to worry really about polishing out your seam on the top. You could, of course, you know, make your template the other way so your seam would be in the center back. Either one of those is totally fine and acceptable. And And what you wind up with is a really cool, you can have a really nice wide band ring at the top, and it'll taper down to a smaller width at the bottom that makes it a little more comfortable to wear. And I actually think that this one I made even a little bit too wide at the bottom, so I'm going to try and narrow that down a bit. And this is going to be a little bit of a tutorial, a little bit more of a free form, because once I get the main pieces cut, I'm just going to kind of be figuring out what I want to put where. And I am making a ring tonight in honor of Corvus. Whether she be on the stream or not, I shall send a photo of it to her later to torture her.
She's finishing up a final.
She's finishing up a final, so I will just have to torture her after her final. So, tools and supplies. Tools is going to be all of your soldering stuff. In addition to your regular soldering things, you're going to need some kind of a ruler. You're going to need metal shears to cut your metal, your typical assortment of files and sandpapers, a flex shaft with the sanding disc on. Ooh, thank you. Thank you, Mary. I like that I'm diaphanous. I do have a floofy thing on. And I'm wearing pink-esque clothing. But what I really want to know is, why is it doing that? Okay, what is going on with the thing? Oh, that's why. Anyway. Technology, not always my friend. We all know that. But anyway, thank you for the diaphanous comment. I feel like I've been neglecting, really, my rubies and my sapphires, and so I decided to dress to accommodate my rubies and my sapphires so that I could wear them today. So, tools are going to be all your soldering stuff, plus a ruler, rubber cement. This is going to be helpful for exactly the same reason it was helpful in the tutorial this afternoon, if anybody was watching that one. Flex shaft with a sanding disc, your regular hand tools, round nose, chain nose cutters, a caliper or some way of measuring millimeters, your handy dandy Pententi ring blank sizing chart. You can get that in the Twitch chat by typing !chart, and it will pull it up for you. That's going to tell me how long I need to cut my ring blank to make Corvus's ring size of 7.5. However, when you're making a very wide ring like this, it's not always a bad idea to size up half a size. So I think I'm going to shoot for a size 8. I'm using 24 gauge sheet metal, so we're going to go with, this is much thinner than this chart goes, so we're going to go with, I think I'm going to do the 7.5 size after all, 57.8 millimeters. So that's the length that I'm going to be cutting, and I'm going to write that down because otherwise I'm not going to remember it. So in addition to all of your soldering tools and your handy dandy sizing chart as far as supplies to make your ring, you're going to need some sheet silver. I've got 24 gauge. I've got a 3x3 sheet of 24 gauge. Here you are going to need bits and parts and things. See, there's the things, Mary, to put on your ring. So these are a bunch of cool cast pieces by my lovely friends at Nina Designs, who once again I absolutely adore. They've started doing something recently, I think because they got sick of people like me murdering their earrings, where they're actually doing what are called solderable components, which means they're literally just the cast pieces that are designed to be soldered onto something, but they don't have as wide a range in the solderables as they have in the rest of their earring line. So I'm still going to be murdering some earrings. I'm going to be murdering this already murdered sparrow, possibly, for my ring project tonight. So I just have a bunch of sort of bits and parts in here. Not quite sure what I'm going to wind up using. I have this labradorite stone and this really pretty winkety blue, look at that, flashy labradorite. And then I'm going to be setting that. I'm going to make a custom bezel for it using some bezel strip. That is a little different than what I did on my sample. What I did on my sample was I used some pre-made bezel cups. If you've been hanging out on the Beading Dream stream for any amount of time, you've probably seen me use those on various occasions. So that's also an option if you don't want to make your own custom bezel. I'm going to really try to remember to hallmark this sterling silver ring with my 925 stamp. We'll see how well that works. Doesn't always work so well for me because I'm forgetful. And I've got my pickle and pickle pot off screen. I've got my flux here. Talk a little bit about what that is and what it does when it comes time for me to use it. I may oxidize this ring with liver of sulfur. We're going to see how far I get on the project before the time becomes absolutely unreasonable. And then as far as solder goes, I'm going to be using easy and extra easy because this is a large piece of metal and this is a not large torch. So when you're dealing with bigger pieces of metal and you're still using the butane torches, something's gotta give. So a lot of times that is, first of all, the thickness of your metal. That's why I'm using 24 instead of something thicker. And then also the melting points of your solder are gonna need to come down so that you can actually make the whole project work. So you can download templates like this from the internet, but I'm going to show you a quick and dirty way to make it yourself. And we're going to have some fun with focus. Yes, everyone loves it when I do fun with focus. I know. I need a little graphic. This is fun with focus that I can just click on when I'm doing my producing on the fly. But I did completely forget to refocus my cam because I do not want my torch right here. Because that, ladies and gentlemen and denizens of the internet, that is how you melt webcams. And you know how I know that. Because I did it once on a I'm still like terrified. I will never try and teach that project again just because of the tragedy that ensued with the great melting of the webcam of 2020. Like that project is forever dead to me because of that. All right, I'm gonna see if the keyboard will help me. Nope. I love it when I'm like sliding the focus slider over with the keyboard and it doesn't do jack. It's like, really? Autofocus? Yes? No? So if anybody wonders why I don't use autofocus, that's why. That's what my camera does when I use autofocus. But anyway, so yes, sorry for the little producing on the fly. I did forget that I have to do this, but it's going to be a fun project, I think, once I can get it so you can actually look at it. Nope. Usually it does eventually behave. So let's see, how was everybody's day? Wherever you were. I'm guessing I'm possibly the most diaphanous stream viewer tonight, but if anybody's sporting a more diaphanous look than me, how did that affect your day? Really, I'm just making random stuff up while I'm trying to get this stupid thing to focus. Hey, sometimes I can trick the autofocus. Nope. It's not letting me trick it. They're whispering in the background because they don't want to mess up my stream, but now I'm like, what are they saying? Oh, god damn it. Every time I do this, I bet people are like, why didn't you just leave it? It was fine. Just don't touch the technology, Allison. Don't mess it up. Also, for anybody who is interested in a Mamie update, she's doing well. She's still got her weirdo eye thing going on, but she's acting just fine. She is chowing down. She is sleeping and eating, and I know, technology hates happiness for sure. She's sleeping and eating and doing all the Mamie stuff. She really does not enjoy getting her antibiotics though, because that's where that scratch came from. Alright, I'm gonna give this one more try, and then, oh, poor Schnitzel. Sorry, that's not a good day. That's a terrible day. Poor puppy. So what does that mean for a doggy as far as a diagnosis of doggy dementia? Sorry, y'all. I realize this is the least interesting thing on Twitch right now. I promise it's gonna get better. Just hang with me. Alright, so where? Ooh, that's so unfortunate. I'm so sorry, Mary. I really am. I think my camera might also have dementia. Sometimes this works so easily, and sometimes it's just so freaking putsy. I mean, oh my gosh. Thank you. Alright, everybody who hung with me for that, I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Now let's zoom back in and get cracking on this actual project here. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I am... So, interesting story about doggy acupuncture. Also, when I was glue gunning earlier, I managed to glue gun my Tervis and my Starbucks cup, and since they're plastic, it's not coming off. So, interesting story about doggy acupuncture that I will relay to you, Mary, later, that came from my aunt. But for now, let's go ahead and let's work on this project. So I'm going to start by drawing a straight line down the middle of my paper. And if you have like a pen or a skinny Sharpie, I have a pencil. That'll work great. That's ideal. Like what you want when you're, oh, this is a pencil. This is a pencil. It has lead in it. It's awesome. When you're doing something like this, you want the thinnest line possible because the actual thickness of your lines does make a difference. For instance, a regular Sharpie, like your regular fine point Sharpies, which are to me the fattest Sharpies, you know, your line's like 1/16 of an inch thick. That makes a difference when you're doing something like a ring where size is really important. So I'm going to start by drawing a straight line down the center of my paper. Now 57.8 millimeters is my phone's in my pocket. I'm like, where's my pocket calculator? It's in my pocket, shockingly. So half of that is going to be 28.9 millimeters. So I'm just going to pick a point here to be my center, and I'm going to measure 28.9 from my center. So when you're measuring with a caliper, you measure from the inside of this jaw to the inside of that jaw. That's the measurement that your digital is going to show you. So 28.9. Okay, 28.9. So that right there is my center, and that's my 28.9. So what I'm actually going to do with this is I'm only going to draw half of this template because I need it to be identical right to left, and so I'm not a very good artist, so it's easier for me if I only draw half of it than fold it in half and cut it. So I'm just, for my own edification, going to draw myself a center line. This is why I adore these clear rulers, is because you can actually line that up and you can draw out a line and you know it's going to be square without actually having to use a square, which is great. I'm going to draw myself a line here too so I know where the thing ends. Now, how wide do I want my ring to be? It's a good question. Where did I put my sample ring is another spectacular question that I actually can't answer right now. There it is. So my sample ring is about, if we don't count all the stuff that's on top of it, it's about 26.6 millimeters wide. Why don't we just make that an even 30 millimeters wide, and that way I can just go for 15 millimeters as being half of my, so this is not going to be a small ring, but it's going to have a really nice canvas for me to put a lot of detail on there. So I'm just going to line that up there, and I'm going to make my mark here for my 15 millimeters, and then I'm just going to turn that around and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so this is what I've got. I've got the half the length of my ring. I've got the entire width of my ring, half above and half below my center line. The last thing I need to do is figure out how wide do I want the band to be at the center back. And like I said, I think this is too big. So this is 13.2 millimeters. I think I'm going to go with 10 millimeters. Hi, Corvus. You have not, I haven't done anything exciting yet. How was your final? Are you in need of consoling or celebrating? So I'm going to go 10 millimeters at the back, which makes it, again, really easy because I'm just going to go 5 on each side of center. We're still in the slightly boring math portion of the program. We haven't gotten to the labradorites and ravens yet. But spoiler alert, there will be labradorites and ravens.
That was a bit of a spoiler.
No. I said I was going to make a ring to torture Corvus. Who would have not expected labradorites and ravens? Come on.
Fair.
Oh my god, only one more final and then you graduate? That's amazing. God, I remember that feeling, and like once you get the last one done, it's such a weight off. The thing I always hated when I was in school, because I lived in the dorms, is we actually had to move out of the dorms during spring finals week. And so like during spring finals my senior year, I was taking finals, moving out of my dorm room, finding a place to live, and doing graduation rehearsals and getting ready for graduation and hosting family in town. It was like, I think the weight lifted from me like 2 or 3 days after graduation when everyone left. I was like, but yay, that's so awesome, Corvus. We are so happy for you. Okay, so now if you are, again, like me and you're not the bestest drawer, you can go ahead and mark yourself kind of a middle line here, just to use as a guide. To help you with your top and bottom symmetry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and now draw my shape. So again, this is the shape that I'm going for. So I'm just going to do a curve from here to here. And like that. And then what I can do is I can actually measure this here, and I can make myself a mark. Oh, I had that pretty much right at a 1/4 inch-ish. Go me. So then I know that I've got to go through that mark. So that doesn't look, that's not right. That's wrong. That measurement is non-correct. It's a 1/4 inch plus some. Let's try that again, shall we? So like I said, you can download these templates off the internet. You don't have to go through this painstaking process. I just, you know, personally, I find it nice to know like how to do it if you can't get to the internet. But by all means, like if you're like, this is redonkulous, just search shaped ring templates and I promise there will be plenty for you. Okay, so now I'm going to cut out this half of my ring template just to my center line, because once again I need right left symmetry here. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take that, I'm going to fold it over on my center line, and by on my center line, I meant on my center line. There we go. Alright, crease it, make sure it's nice and straight, and then I'm going to cut out this side of my template. So yes, I have spent literally 20 minutes making this template. Now if this is something that you do a lot of, first of all, what I would recommend is making some of these, labeling with them with size, and then photocopying them. If you do this a lot, you can actually get plastic ring templates. You know, like you can get circle templates and whatnot. Jewelry making companies sell these, so you can just grab out your ring template and be like, okay, I need a 7.5, wham bam, there you go. But this is the down and dirty way to do it if you don't have any of that equipment, and that gives me my ring template. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my sheet silver. Again, this is 24 gauge sheet silver. I'm going to grab my rubber cement, and I'm going to spread the back of that with rubber cement, and then I'm going to cement it down onto my silver. Now here's a good cheat, is I can actually line this up with one edge of my sheet silver, so that's one line that I don't have to cut. Don't drown it in rubber cement. Okay, you just need a thin layer. So I'm just going to rubber cement the back of that. Yes, that is 2 tutorials in one day that used rubber cement. And just flip that bad boy over. Position it where you want. Make sure it's all on the metal. Alright, and I'm going to give that rubber cement just 1 second to set up, and then, do I have? I do. And then I'm going to burnish this down onto my silver. Now this is going to require a little more aggressive burnishing than my tin can did earlier today, so I actually have a bone folder. See, that's why I said let it set up for a minute. Obviously, my minute was not long enough. There we go. And just burnish it down, make sure it's down on that metal nice and securely. And then since this is 24 gauge metal, we can cut it with a shears. Okay, we don't actually have to cut it with a cutter. Or not really, Allison, with a cutter? No, we don't have to cut it with a saw. We can cut it with a metal shears. Has to be a real metal shears this time though. Kitchen shears ain't gonna work on 24 gauge metal. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out. So just like our beverage can this afternoon, this is a really inflexible medium, so sometimes you've got to, you know, come at it at different angles to ensure your cut. I'm of course using my favorite Euro Tool metal shears. I swear to God, you can bury me with these shears because they're amazing and I love them so much. Oh, also pro tip, write what your metal is on it with a Sharpie before you just chunk it in your drawer of metal, which is what I was about to do. And then I've got one more cut that I'm going to make after this, and the reason for that is because of the shape of my stone. Okay, so there is a little shaped bit. Now, this labradorite is a little unusual in that it's actually rounded on both sides, so it's not a cabochon, it's basically like an undrilled briolette. So what I want to do is I want to just give it a little seat to sit in so that it's not going to be a complete pain in the butt for me to set it. So again, I'm just going to kind of freehand that because I can absolutely fix that with a file if I need to. I'm just gonna kind of make a mini little version of my lab shape there, and then I'm gonna attempt to do the same thing on this side. Anybody out there who's an actual artist who can draw, just no judgy. I know it is a beautiful lab corvus. That side's especially pretty. The other side's pretty too, but that's definitely that's the money shot right there. So I'm just going to use my shears and cut that out. I could do that with a saw if I needed to. A saw would give me a more precise cut and be slightly less of a pain in the ass, but we're going with shears. Which means I'm going to have to do a little bit more cleanup with the file. Another pro tip, if you're working in a small space like this and you can't quite get, you know, the last little bit of that shape to come off, just grab it with the pliers and twist it. It's going to leave you with a little burr, but once again, we're probably going to have to do some work on this with a file anyway, so no big deal. Plus, it's always nice when you can use metal fatigue to your advantage for once, instead of it being the bane of your existence. Alright, so this is my ring. I'm going to go ahead and I can take off my template now. And I want to flatten this, so that means I'm going to grab my bench block and my rawhide mallet. It's going to get loud for a minute on the Beading Dream stream, so if you need to turn your volume down, go ahead and do that now. Okay, and what I'm also going to do, because I always freaking forget to do it, is I'm going to go ahead and hallmark this with my Maker's Mark and my 925 stamps, because it is sterling silver. Corvus says, what do you do with all the metal scraps? So yeah, you can, so if you have, there are a couple of things you can do with your metal scraps. What I typically do with mine is, since I don't have casting facilities, I'll collect all my scraps and I'll send them in to one of the companies I buy my findings from, and they will give me account credit in exchange for my scraps. So that's typically what I do with my scraps. A lot of people who have casting abilities or the ability to make their own ingots, make their own wire, etc., then you can absolutely literally melt down all of your scraps and reuse it. You can melt it down, you know, pour an ingot, draw some wire, you know, roll some sheet, you know, it just depends on what tools you have at your disposal. I really don't have any of those tools, so I'll just typically send it back in for account credit so I can buy more stuff. Okay, so this is going to be the inside of my ring. That's where I'm going to put my stamp. So I'm going to take my 925 stamp. There we go. It is officially hallmarked sterling silver. And then I'm going to put my maker's mark on there, which is, I just use this cute little birdie because I think it's adorbs. It's not a raven corvus. It's just, it's a cute bird. And this is something that I forget to do, and it's so important if you're going to be selling your pieces that you have them hallmarked, because otherwise you really have no way to prove that just because you said it's sterling, it is sterling. And I realize that it's a little bit weird that, like, you know, okay, well, the only way to prove it's sterling silver is for you to put a stamp on it that says it's sterling silver. So what if you're lying? That does happen. But still, people are used to looking for hallmarks. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up these a bit with a half round file. So I'm just going to brace that against the edge of my box and do a little bit of filing. And I'll probably have to do a little bit more filing after I solder my ring together, because I can pretty much guarantee you these aren't symmetrical. Alright, so there we go. So that's basically my ring blank. So now what I need to do is I need to solder this together on this seam. So in order to do that, of course, I need to make it round. I could totally stamp my logo into them, Corvus, if I had ever had a logo stamp made for myself. I started using the bird back when I was a very broke artist and I couldn't afford a custom logo stamp, and so now the bird is just kind of sentimental. But yes, there are lots of great companies out there who will make your logo into a metal stamp for you for a charge. Now this is also, I'm going to go grab a different mandrel and I'm going to tell you why in a second, so be right back. So this falls under the umbrella of, I am blessed to be able to have a studio that has lots of tools in it that I've acquired over the years. If this is the only mandrel you have, this is a tapered mandrel, you can absolutely use this. But when you're working on a wider ring like this type of mandrel, which is called a stepped mandrel, is actually way better, because when you're dealing with a wider width like this, if you try and wrap it around your tapered mandrel, you're gonna wind up, sorry, that's debris from this morning's class, you're gonna wind up with one circumference of your ring bigger than the other. I'm gonna go up at least one size, and then I'm just gonna bend this around my mandrel. My goal here is to get my pieces down against my mandrel. I can use my rawhide mallet to help me with that. So the reason I usually want to go down a bit in size is because, as we've learned, metal will spring up. Alright, so we can refine that and fix it. Hey, I didn't do too bad on that. That's impressive. I have officially impressed myself. Doesn't happen very often. Okay, so now I need to work on getting these edges trued up and flush so that I can solder them. So I'm going to go ahead and use my pliers to just kind of bend them down a bit, because even when you hammer with the mandrel, you can see it goes up, and what I want is I want those edges coming straight in together. If there's some distortion of your circular shape at this point, that's totally fine, because once I've soldered this, we're going to put it back on our tapered mandrel and we're going to hammer it back around. Metal does loves bouncing back up, for sure. It's very bouncy and very sassy. Alright, so as we've talked about on the stream before, solder will not flow across a gap. So this is my ring all put together. Okay, these gaps right here, this is a problem. The solution to this problem is, what I actually have to do is, it means there's too much material up here. So I've got to file back this edge up here to be even with this edge down here. So I'm going to just open my ring up a bit. I'm going to find myself a good sharp file. And then I'm just going to work on taking that top edge back a little bit so that everything lines up. Oops, should not have turned that. So once you've done a little bit of work on it, go ahead and put it back together and see how you did. So when you put it back together, you're just gonna move it so the metal moves past, the edges move past each other, and then bring them back together and see if you've managed to line them up, which I actually did not a terrible job of. Hooray. Let's see, so, alright, so I still need to work a little bit more on this side. So while I'm doing that, so does anybody have any requests for tomorrow? Tomorrow is Freeform Friday. That is the day that I pick a project, any project, and do it for y'all on the stream from start to finish. It could be a torch project because I had to schedule a lesson tomorrow, so I'm going to have to stream from Beading Dreams for Freeform Friday instead of from home. So, all suggestions will be considered. Does anybody have any ideas as to what they want me to make? And if you don't, that's okay. I'll pick something at, 5:55, like I usually do. Because that is how life at the bead store rolls. Make a burb. Okay, Corvus wants me to make a burb. Suggestion noted. Any other suggestions? Corvus, what kind of burb?
A beverage burb.
A beverage burb? I don't know if I know how to make one of those.
Make a bird out of a beverage.
Oh, but I already made a butterfly out of a beverage container.
I know, I'm just saying.
Okay, so we have one request for me to make a burb tomorrow. Does anybody else have any other requests? Alright, so now it's time for me to solder this bad boy together. Almost time for me to solder this bad boy together. So, when you're dealing with any burb, pick my, alright, I will make some kind of burb tomorrow, per Corvus's request. I shall will a burb into existence, mañana, on the Beading Dream stream. So, whenever you're dealing with, the longer the surface that you're trying to file, the more difficult it is, because the easier it is to kind of get off track. And again, this prep work is just, it can seem interminable. It's definitely nobody's favorite thing to do, but if you do it well, then your soldering experience is going to be so much easier and better. I mean, and possible. There's also that. Like, there are some levels of, bad prep work where it's not even possible to solder it. And then there are just some levels where the prep work is giving you the finger. Of course it's being sassy since it's a ring in honor of Corvus. I mean, how could I expect it to behave? Alright, now I think I've legitimately got a solderable ring. So that means I need this. Okay, so of course, if you're gonna do this soldering thing anywhere, whether it's in your own home, in a community workspace, take your pick. You really do want to be safe about it. I do have a short is the word I'm looking for. Short little 5-point soldering safety lecture. You can get that by typing !S safety into the Twitch chat. That'll take you to the video link for that. So before you fire up any torches, you really should make sure that you are doing everything in the safest manner possible. So now that I'm going to solder this together, I'm going to paint flux on the inside of my ring. So flux is a chemical. I use a borax based flux. What it does is it keeps your metal from oxidizing and allows your solder to flow. So then I'm going to cut myself a couple pieces of easy solder, and I'm going to place one on each side of this. You're probably only going to be able to see the one here, but there are actually two, or there will be two. Now there are two. Now Allison needs to find a tweezers. Aha! Alright, so I'm going to place my 2 pieces of solder onto my joint. Just set them right on there. Like so. Okay, so you can see that one there. So it's resting right on my joint. Now I'm going to take my torch and I'm going to put some butane in it because it's completely empty. It's less useful when you have no fuel. Also, the other thing I should do that would be real smart is find a hair tie. I thank you, Corvus. I was saying earlier when you were still taking your final that I felt that I was not giving my rubies and sapphires enough love, and so I had to wear pink today so that I could wear all of them. Also, Heather's really the one who deserves the compliments for this shirt because it used to be hers. But I was like, if Corvus is watching tonight, like I'd have expected a comment like, what the hell color are you wearing? So just filling with my refill butane canister, especially when you're, I mean, my torch was empty, like there was no fuel in it, but if your torch is even a little bit low, when you're doing a big project like this, you really want to make sure that it's nice and full. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and alright, so now I'm going to heat this, and I need to heat the whole thing. Alright, I need this whole ring to get nice and hot. Okay, so notice this is what flux does. Notice how the rest of my ring is turned black, but where my flux is has not. And that's good. That means it's doing what it's supposed to do. So once I've heated the whole ring, I'm going to focus on the joint. Did you see? There goes that solder. Flows into the joint, and hopefully same thing on the other side. Yes. Alright, pretty good. I didn't quite get it. There's a little gap right there, but I'm going to cover it with a stone so I don't think that it's going to be a problem. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it onto my steel mandrel, and I'm going to wait for it to cool. This is definitely one of those classes where I should have grabbed some quench water. Once this is cool enough for me to touch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it down my mandrel and I'm going to hammer on it. That's going to do 2 things for me. First thing it's going to do is it's going to round out my ring. Second thing it's going to do is it's going to tell me if I did a good job soldering that joint. Because if you smack on it and it stays, then you know that you did a good job. Alright, so I smacked on it and it stayed. That means I did a good job on my joint. So this is phase 1 of my assemblage ring. Now, I actually overlapped a little bit here, so this is where one of the couple places in this tutorial where your sanding disc is going to come into play. So I'm just going to turn that on and just sand that down so that it's flush. That should be good enough. Once again, we are going to be covering this with stuff, so we just want to make sure that we have got a decent surface. I'm going to take my stone, and I think what I actually want to do is I want to, like, this shape is good. This is a little too high, so I'm going to grab that half round file, and I'm just going to knock that down and widen this out a little bit. Okay, that looks slightly better. So now I'm just going to take my stone and see if it will in fact sit in there, which it will. Look at that. Alright, so next step is going to be to make a bezel for the stone. Now, if I wanted to, I could make that a little bit wider, which might not be a terrible idea. I could do that with a saw, or I can just do that with my file. Also, by the way, this is why all of those jewelry process videos on TikTok are in, like, you know, quadruple fast motion, because shit does not go fast. Once again, next time you're at an art market and you find somebody who's actually an artisan jeweler rather than a reseller, like, respect their time. And even if you're dealing with a reseller, you know, respect the time of the people who actually created the jewelry in India, in Mexico, like wherever. Like, those are super skilled artisans in those countries who do not get enough credit. Oh, Corvus, what would we do without you? The other thing I'm doing with my file is, while I'm making the hole bigger, is I'm actually filing at an angle, so I have kind of an angled seat for my stone to sit in, and that's going to help. Also, those of you who have may have noticed, I am in fact doing the thing I tell y'all never to do. I'm sawing my file back and forth. When I'm doing this complicated of a shape, I can't pick it up. I'll never find my spot again. Okay, so that's my little seat for my stone. Now I'm going to grab my bezel wire and I'm going to make a bezel for my stone. So this is 1/8 inch fine silver bezel strip, and I'm going to cut a couple 3 inches of it. Take my lovely labradorite and just form that around my stone. Now, it's tempting when you're doing a teardrop to put the joint at the top. I highly unrecommend that. Like, the least I can recommend that, like, please don't do it. The reason for that is because where the solder joint is actually going to be the hardest point to push over when you're setting your bezel, and the point of a teardrop is the hardest point to push when you're setting a bezel. So if you combine those two things, it's going to be really hard for you to actually set your stone. Unrecommend is Heather's new favorite unword. Woohoo! I love it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just bend my bezel strip around my stone. Since this one's not flat on the back, it's actually going to be a little easier for me to hold it in my hand and do it, rather than put it on the mat or on the work surface. Yes, I am hugging the lab with silver, Corvus. Okay, so make sure you have a nice tight fit, like you literally are hugging the lab with silver. Find yourself a scribe or a marker and just scribe that line, because you're probably gonna lose your shape once you let go. Also, one of my one of the best things that one of my instructors told me once is, like, have a little tray on your workstation for just all your little bits. So, like, when I remember to do this, it's so much better, because now my stone's back in my tray and I don't have to search for it on my work surface. The fact that my work surface tends to be a mess has absolutely nothing to do with it. So I'm going to find my scribe line, and I'm going to cut. This is fine silver, this bezel strip, so this is really good for making granules, which I may or may not make some for the ring this evening. Now I just need to do a real quick file on those edges to get them flush. Yeah, right, exactly. Good tips for forgetful people, aka me too. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and tension fit that. Meaning I want my two edges to sit against each other without me having to hold them. And then when you've got something like this where it's kind of coming to, see how it's coming like a peak instead of a curve, taking your chain nose pliers and squeezing it. Sorry y'all, this is going to be a long stream. It's just such a fun project. I had so much fun making the sample that I really wanted to make one on stream for y'all. Yes, I'm old. Stop laughing at me, Corvus. I hear you cackling through the internet. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and solder this bezel together. I am going to go ahead and still use easy solder for this. I'm going to switch to my extra easy solder when I'm adding my embellishments. Technically, I do not have to flux this because it's fine silver and it doesn't oxidize, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm just going to flux the joint. I don't know, Heather might stand it's time for her to go home and go to bed. Which is fine, you don't have to wait for me. I'm going to take that solder, I'm going to set my joint right on top of it. Nah, maybe. Stop. There. Okay, so the bezel strip is going to take so much less heat than the ring did. So I'm just going to take my torch, heat that up. I'm not even bringing my torch quite as close as I could to this because this stuff will melt in 2 seconds flat if you're not careful. Okay, so my solder flowed. I just want to make sure it went across my joint, which it did, and there you go. One bezel for the labradorite. Now I'm going to set that aside to cool, and then I'm going to reshape that around my labradorite, and then we're going to solder that onto the ring. And then comes the fun part, because then we get to start putting stuff on it. It's always my favorite part. Woo, stuff! Woo, stuff! Stuff is good. Probably gonna need that in a minute.
Unless you're Mary, in which case
the things are what it's all about, which is it's fine.
We'll put things on it too.
You can be all about the things. Okay, so now I'm going to take my bezel and I'm going to use my labradorite to re-shapeify it. Where are you? There's this random piece of gook on the inside of my bezel. Oh, you are Rogue Solder.
What? not the worst thing to find.
Well, it is when it's on the inside of the bezel that you're trying to fit to your stone. So this is why you shouldn't use too much solder, because what happened was my extra solder pooled on the inside of my bezel and now it won't fit my stone. So I cut off as much of it as I could. Now I'm just going to have to take my half round file and file it off.
That really is a gorgeous lab.
It is. It's barely 5 o'clock in California, Corvus. Okay, let's see if that fits now. Also, unless you're in some weird time warp, wouldn't it be closer to 5:30?
She's rounding down.
Okay, fair. But I don't know that rounding down counts as barely.
Shh. She's in finals. Time is meaningless.
That's fair. But she finished her final.
Only one.
She only has one left, though.
I know.
Okay, so there we go. So that's what I want as far as fit goes. I want a nice tight fit around my stone. And now, for my next trick, I will solder this onto my ring, for which I need this. This is a third hand with cross-locking tweezers, so the ring is going to go into my third hand. I'm going to flux the top of my ring. And then I'm going to take my bezel, and it definitely has a nice side and a wonky side. So I am putting the nice side down on my ring. And this is the fun thing when you're doing a shaped ring, is I actually need to file this part of my bezel, get on camera here and here, so that it has a slight curve to go with the curve of my ring. So, more filing. See, anybody who's like, metalsmithing isn't all filing, they are full of lies and treason. So no, Lori, I didn't flatten out the top of the ring to give the bezel a flat surface. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to curve the bezel so that it'll sit against the ring. If I could find my big half round file, that'd be easier, but I can't, so we're going to do it with a needle file. So yes, I'm taking down the surface on this part and this part of my bezel. And this is one of those best to do in baby steps things, because if you overfile, then you're just going to spend the rest of your life correcting. There actually is, Corvus makes an excellent point. I'll be right back.
Because you have a machine.
I do.
It's like magic.
So yes, you could absolutely do it with a half round file, a larger one than this, and the only reason I'm not is because I don't know where to put mine. But you can also use this. This is a sanding drum, so what this is going to do is it's going to do the same thing as a half round file would do. Also, my light clamp just fell on the ground, so that's a thing. Doesn't seem to be affecting the lighting of my stream so much, so I'm not gonna worry about it. So I'm just gonna put my sanding drum. I'm still gonna be using my sanding disc in a minute, so I'm not gonna put that too far away, but I'm gonna put my sanding drum on there instead. So thank you, Corvus, for reminding me to use the power tools. Now I will say that your bezel strip is very fragile, so be careful, and you're probably going to mess up your shape and have to, fix it again. But it'll go much faster. Stop moving!
No.
I know, it's everybody's favorite sound, right? Also, don't file your camera.
Don't melt your camera. Don't file your camera. You are no fun.
I am absolutely no fun, you're right, because at some point I'm going to run out of money to keep buying webcams that I keep ruining.
Well, luckily you actually have another one that
No, we are going to get that one to work, god damn it. As God is my witness. Alright. Get out. Go back in your dish. Okay, a little bit more and I should be good. Okay, I'm really annoyed by the fact that I keep hitting my camera. It's with this stupid light that's now not attached to anything. The Heather camera is not working, Corvus. The Heather camera, when we upgraded the graphics card on the computer, decided that it did not want to play with the other cameras anymore, unfortunately. So we've been without a Heather cam for the last couple sales streams, which is a bummer. Okay, so hopefully that was enough. Alright, I think I can make that work. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, I've got my bezel on my ring, and now we're going to start with the extra easy solder. So I'm going to cut 4 pieces of extra easy solder and drop them on the inside of that bezel. Heather, could I ask you a huge...
What you need?
I did not give myself enough caffeine for the length of this strain.
Yes.
Yes. I haven't, Corvus. I should. Alright, so I've got 4. You know, and I was thinking about this today, though, it always just seems like I'm running from, you know, problem to problem with my ass on fire. And it would be really nice at some point in my life not to have that be the norm. Okay, I'm saving these 2 pieces of solder. Also, I should probably put my soldering board down.
Sorry, there was a small cameo.
Well, I mean, everyone's been Heather deprived.
I know.
For a while now. so this is why you know, put your soldering board down first. Silly. Alright, so I'm going to try and flow those pieces of solder, and I think what I can do when I do that is gosh darn it, I'll be able to actually press down my edges and get everything to solder down nice and neatly. Hopefully. That's the plan. We'll see if it works. Alright, so here we go. I need to move it up a little bit just to position that seat correctly. Well, and I wonder if that'll like just running and like never feeling secure and never feeling like you got a handle on it, like is that an adult thing like from always, or is that just like our younger generations of adulting, since adulting has turned into such a just massive, you know, obnoxious endeavor for various reasons?
I think yes is the answer to that, unfortunately.
Oh, well, that's not what was supposed to happen. That's okay. If at first you don't succeed, put it back on and try again. Note to self, don't solder your finger. Hurts. Add a little more there, because I think what I had. So what I'm trying to do is get this point attached. And don't forget to heat your entire piece, okay? Because this is a massive heat sink. Also, I realize it's out of focus. Sorry, because it's tall now. It's not flat on the thing. There we go. Solder's starting to flow. Yes. Zip it good. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So remember when I said this was a big project? As in large amounts of metal? This is what I mean, is it's a lot harder to get everything to flow when you got this amount of metal going on. But I got half my bezel here that's really nicely contacting my ring, so I'm going to go for let's try and get that to zip down, and then I'll address that other side that's not really contacting very well. Okay, so I have a solid amount of this bezel that's zipped down now, which I can actually move this and you can see that a little better. So right here is zipped, the rest of it is not. Also, if you needed any evidence that your ring is hot, there you go. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to throw this in the pickle real quick. That's going to do two things. Number one, it's going to quench it, make it cool enough so I can touch it. Number two is it's going to get off some of that fire scale, which is, I think, giving me difficulties in soldering. I just need to grab a paper towel. Alright, so grab that out of the pickle. Okay, so see how, and I messed up the bezel, but see how that's all kind of whitish now instead of black like it was? That's good, because solder does not like to flow on dirty metal. I'm going to go ahead and pop my stone back in there just to resize it. It's okay if I do that without dental floss because I got a hole there, and I can pop it out of it if I need to. Alright, so good fit, very good fit. Super happy with the way the stone is in there. Alright, so I'm just going to make sure that everything has contact. Alright, and we're going to try that soldering thing one more time. It is. It's a lovely stone. I've been wanting to do something fun with it for a while. Alright, so now more solder, put more flux on it. Alright, we're going to try and get this bad boy down. And yes, there's a lot of solder on there because I'm getting frustrated. Let's see, pickling and starting again really is oftentimes a magical solution when you're having problems with not being able to get your solder to flow. Because look at that. Zippity, 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 zippity doo-dah over here. Yep, the whole thing is zipped. This one random piece of solder. Nobody needs you, but now you're going to flow, of course, because I touched you. There we go. Alright, so now the bezel is zipped down. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to enlarge that hole a little bit, because when I set my stone in there to shape it, it was sitting a little higher than I wanted it to. So once again, using the power tools, but you could do this with a hand file. I'm going to use this. This is called a cylinder burr. And I'm just going to make that bigger so that my stone will sit down a little bit further, and I'll have enough bezel wire to set it. If I can get the cylinder burr into the Dremel. Thank you. That's what happens when you tighten your pieces up so much, like you can't get them out. So again, thanks everyone for hanging out on tonight's extra long stream. It's supposed to be done almost an hour ago. Poor Heather is still here at work when she should be on her way home.
Yes, poor me.
Alright, also make sure it's cool enough to touch before you try and do this. Just not quite. So here's a trick: if you don't have quench water and you need to cool something down fast, put it on a something steel like a bench block or a ring mandrel. It will literally suck the heat out of it so quickly. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grind this bigger. Should I be wearing eye protection? Absolutely. I am not an example, I am a cautionary tale. And then I'm just going to find my needle file. Or not. There it is. I'm going to find my needle file, and I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup on that with my needle file, because your cylinder burr is an amazing tool, but it does leave a bit of a rough finish. Okay, so now let's just double check and make sure that our lovely labradorite will fit in there. Yes, and that did exactly what I needed it to do. So now see, I have a little bit of metal above my labradorite. That's how I'm going to set it. The fit is perfect, which is why it's a really good thing there's a hole in the back of this, because otherwise there would really be no way for me to get this out of here. But sorry, Lori. I promise that's the last time I'll be grinding with a burr tonight. I'll do some sanding, but no more of that. Oh, crap.
What happened?
I just shot the labradorite into my metal drawer. There it is. It was just like, doom. Okay, so now it's time for embellishments, which of course is the fun part. Alright, and I kind of want you to be able to see this, so we're going to try this. Camera a little farther away. So that's in slightly better focus, I hope. Okay, so now it's time to, now is the cool part. Now we get to start adding things. So, since it's a ring in honor of Corvus, of course, there's going to be a raven. kind of thinking I want him or her sort of on the side. Alright, I want something there that's kind of roundish. So I'm gonna murder a pair of earrings to get the little moon. And this is where your sanding disc is gonna come into play, because this little button on the back, when you cut off an earring, see that little bit on the back? That's gonna make it real hard for you to solder because it's not flat. So this is where I'm going to unload my cylinder burr, and I'm going to put back in my sanding disc so that I can sand. And you could use your sanding drum too for this. I just prefer the sanding disc. But you can go ahead and sand the back of that flat. This is another thing that's awesome about Neenah and their solderables is, you know, the back is already flat, as opposed to when you murder earrings, when you have to make the back flat yourself. And this is always super fun to do with a bitty little piece like this. That's actually a little too small for me to hold with my bare hands and do this. This is why we have tools, y'all. In this case, this is why we have hemostat. So I will say that one of the big benefits of a flex shaft over a Dremel is the foot pedal. There. Okay, so that should be flat enough to solder now. So, the one benefit of a flex shaft over a Dremel is the foot pedal, because you don't have to, you can use both of your hands to do your work, and you don't have to worry about leaving one of those hands free to disengage the actual device. So let's see. I can do a moon there. I have a sun too. I kind of feel like the sun on the top and the moon on the bottom could be kind of fun. Let's see, what else do I have? Bear with me while I look in my stash of cool stuff. Oh, I know what I can put on the top. Another stone. Duh. Be right back. Like, I wanted something to balance, but the sun really wasn't doing it for me, so I'm going to do a bezel cup with a little amethyst that's going to go up there. So that means what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sweat solder onto... Okay, I'm sorry. My flux is really, really in need of water. Like, it's not even the consistency of paste. It's the consistency of paste that's been sitting in the corner of the classroom for like years and drying out. And I'm gonna go ahead and
that was a very evocative image.
Well, that's what my flux was like. It's better now. Like when you paint it on something and it just doesn't stick because it's so incredibly just dry. So I'm going to go ahead and sweat solder onto the back of my moon, my little bezel cup, and my raven. I'm probably going to be adding a couple more elements, but since I've got all 3 of those out, I might as well just sweat solder onto them all at the same time. So this is extra easy solder because I don't want to mess up anything that I've done as far as soldering my bezel, soldering my ring. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to sweat solder onto all of these. Make sure you got a tweezers handy just in case your solder decides to jump off like that one just did. Ooh, bad choices. I need to go get another bezel cup. Sorry, y'all. I should have gotten more than one. Okay, so that one's good. The solder successfully sweated onto that. And solder successfully sweat onto my raven. And I'm so sorry, I have to go get another 2mm bezel cup. Okay, so this time I brought 2, which practically guarantees that I'm not going to ruin another one. Because when you have extras, you never need them. It's when you don't have them that you do. So, uno mas with the sweating of the solder. It's so much fun, Corvus. It really is. See, look, that actually worked. And you can make such cool things. Alright, so we have Crescent Moon is going to go there. And my new bezel cup is going to go up here. So now that I've sweat the solder onto them, I'm going to set them onto my metal, and what I'm going to do is reheat my metal until the solder reflows and everything solders into place. So don't forget, you still have to heat your whole thing, alright? Just because is my sound still okay? Because my computer just said that I just unplugged a device from the audio jack. And I did not do any such thing. So I'm just curious. That's definitely a thing, Corvus, but you don't need, you know, you can go with minimum safe space of, you know, a 12-inch by 12-inch area. Sometimes you just have to mess with it to get it level. Okay, I'm here. Awesome. Then I don't know what the heck my computer is smoking, but whatever it is, it can continue having its own good time. Yay. Yeah, at some point I'll have a soldering workspace at home again, but again, feline flambe is just a thing that I don't want to have to worry about. Alright, so those are soldered down. Once again, it's going to go into the pickle. That sound is the sound that your metal makes when it quenches, so it will be cool enough to touch when I pull it out of the pickle. Alright, so now we're going to do the last little bits of decoration. So there's definitely going to be a raven on one side of this ring. And then I'm not completely sure about the other side, so I'll have to think on that whilst I'm doing the raven, but I'm going to go ahead and, ouch! Please remember that your soldering tools are going to be hot. Which I realize is common sense, but still. Alright, so I think my little corvid is gonna go there. And the only thing you really need to be careful of is you don't want to solder anything actually up against the bezel, because then you won't be able to set your stone. So I just need the solder on that corvid to flow, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on my ring mandrel and tap it down so that it actually forms to the ring. Go. Burb is on. Have in fact put a burb on it. Drop that on there. And just give it a little tap. Don't collapse your bezel, okay? Don't hit your bezel when you're doing this. But what I'm doing is I'm just, see how I'm taking the bird that was straight and I'm just curving it so that it sits against the ring, because otherwise what's going to happen is it's going to catch on things. And the cool thing is after you've heated it, it's pretty malleable. Alright, so there is the corvid on the corvus ring. Still not completely happy with that moon. There we go. Now let's fix everything. Let's see. So I've got my moon, I've got my corvid on there. I'm going to have an amethyst and a labradorite. I feel like I want a flower, and I know that Corvus's mama has a beautiful garden. So I think I'm going to balance out my corvid here with a flower up here. I'm just going to use a little one. They have lots of cool flower castings, but I'm just going to use this tiny little cutie guy. And again, I'm going to sweat some extra easy solder onto there. And I think after this I'm going to call the ring done. I mean, I could keep just adding and adding and adding stuff onto this for the next couple of hours, but I think I want to go ahead and, you know, get home at some point tonight. Possibly eat some food. Check on my sick cat, all of that. So I've got some extra easy solder onto the back of my little flower, like so. And I'm gonna sweat it onto the flower. I need to make sure it hits right in the center, because otherwise, if it does that, if it goes down into the petals, it's not gonna work because the petals aren't the part that's contacting the ring. There we go, right in the center. Wham bam. Now a little bit more flux. It is a bit of a commute, it's true. But I appreciate the thought. Alright, so that flour is going to go there. I mean, to be fair, there is, you know, delivery and takeout, but I still can't eat takeout while I'm making a ring on stream. I mean, I can, I have, but I wouldn't recommend it because chemicals and food really are not supposed to mix. Alright, so did you see that kind of settle down? That means it's soldered on there. Alright, Corvus, what do you think? Does it need anything else? I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to throw that in the pickle. And it's going to need to actually pickle for a little bit longer this time because I'm actually going to pickle it and buff it so that I can set the stones in it. So that means it has to get completely clean instead of just mostly clean around the soldering area. Meanwhile, while that's pickling, and so pickle, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a weak acid solution that will clean my piece of all of its fire scale and make it so that I can polish it and make it pretty to wear, or so that I can continue to work on it, because I had to pickle several times during this project. So when I talk about pickle on other soldering streams where I'm doing simpler projects, and I talk about complex projects where you have to actually pickle in between joints, or in between, stages of your project, this is exactly what I'm talking about, because as you solder, your metal gets dirty. And solder doesn't like dirty metal, especially silver solder. Silver solder is so dang princessy. So when you get to the point where you're like, oh my god, why will this solder not flow? Why does metalsmithing hate happiness? Just try pickling and then going back to it. I promise you, at least 7 times out of 10, that solves the problem. So while I'm waiting for my pieces to pickle, I want to share with you some of the other cool things I got from Nina Designs, earrings to murder and solderables. So I got these cute little crescent man in the moon faces, which I think would actually be really fun, like framing a stone could be fun with those. So I got these cute little crescent, sorry, I'll put them on here because y'all actually be able to see them. These cute little crescent moon guys. And they have these beautiful plumeria flower castings, which I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with because they're a little on the big side, but they were just so pretty. I literally could not pass them up. Something just fell down. I don't know what it was. I hope it's not something that I need later. Trying to figure out where the actual focal distance is. Yes! This moon has a face. The other moon does not have a face. And then as far as earrings that I'm gonna murder to death, so this is one of my favorite pairs of earrings that they offer. It's a little sun and a moon. And this is actually how the pair is sold. So you get 1 sun and 1 moon per pair, which is actually great if you're cutting them apart. I got mermaids, super fun. I got Luna moths. Look how freaking adorable those are. That's going to be great. I did get the sparrow skulls, which I considered using on this ring, but I think that this is something that more like needs to be the centerpiece of the ring and then surrounded like by tiny stones, just because it's so dimensional and tall. And then I got these little mandala earring studs. So these are all functional earrings. These are all earrings that I'm going to murder and solder onto things. And then the last thing that I got that I'm really super ridiculously excited about is these tiny bitty Ouija planchettes, and one says yes and one says no, and you can see like by my fingernails, like they're so tiny. So absolutely again, love Nina Designs. If you've never checked them out before, you should. I promise I will, like I said, have another Nina Design stream sometime in the near future where I will torture you with all their beautiful things, but they are...
Oh no!
But they, seriously, first of all, their product is beautiful. Second of all, I've met almost everyone who works for Nina in the US, including their owner, Leah Rivers, and they are all genuinely wonderful people. And they do also make it part of their mission to support women-owned businesses in third world countries by giving out microloans. So they're, you know, it's a really great company to support, and someone you can actually feel good about buying from. This is my little stash of earrings to murder, and also solderable components. Okay, so let's see how the pickling is going. Which means, Allison, what did you do with your tweezers? Oh well, have a hemostat, that'll work. Okay, yay, it's all pickled, it's all clean. So now we're gonna take to it with some steel wool to buff it up, and then I'm gonna set my stones for you. And I actually think I'm gonna buff it up, and in honor of Corvus being dark and goth and terrifying, I think I'm actually going to oxidize this with liver of sulfur and then polish up the highlights and then set my stones. So as usual, when you're fabricating something, the stone's always the last thing to go in. Like, you do everything first. You're gonna, you know, stamp, file, saw, solder, polish, oxidize. Everything happens before you get the money shot of finally putting the stone in. Also, another thing that I'm going to do is the amethyst that I'm going to put into this setting here is not very tall. So I'm going to take a minute and I'm just going to file that setting down, shorten it up a bit so that doesn't cover so much of my amethyst. And you know what would help me do that? My sandy disc. Sanding disc, sandy disc. Yes, Corvus is terrifying. So obviously you need to make sure that you leave enough bezel to actually set the stone, but when you've got a tiny stone like that, like if you drop it in there and the bezel is just like eating it, then when you set your stone, you're going to be covering basically, you know, 80% of it with the bezel, and that's not what we want. The other thing I'm going to fix right now is this right here. Okay, this is pointy and stabby, and we know likey that. So I'm just going to round out those corners. Hi, Tink! Welcome to my very, very long stream. Alright, now it's time for some steel wool fun. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to buff it. So once it comes out of the pickle, it has a finish on it called pickle white. And pickle white is just a layer of fine silver. That's what happens when you pickle sterling silver is the pickle itself takes off all of the oxidized copper, and so leaves you with a layer of fine silver. And all you have to do to make that silver shiny is you need to buff it. You can do that with a tumbler, you can do that with a Dremel or a flex shaft, or you can just do it with steel wool like I'm doing now. The steel wool is going to give you more of a satiny kind of silver finish. The tumbler and like a rotary tool or an actual buffing wheel are going to give you a shinier surface. Yay, Tink, welcome back. Okay, so now I'm going to abandon you guys for one last time to go oxidize this in liver of sulfur. So liver sulfur is a chemical and it turns silver black. It stinks to high heaven. It smells like rotten eggs, but as other than stinky, it's a pretty chill chemical. So I like it better than a lot of other silver oxidizing. Okay, so this is my that's wrong. This is my steel wool buffed ring. So I'm gonna go oxidize that, and then I'm gonna wind up buffing it again with steel wool to get the highlights back buffed up, and then I'm gonna go ahead and set my stones. Now, the question that might be coming to some people's minds right now is why did I buff it when I just said I'm gonna have to buff it again? And the answer is you can oxidize right on top of pickle white, and it can create a really cool finish, or it can create a really awful patchy finish. So I just prefer to buff first and then oxidize. So I'm gonna go oxidize. Heather, did you want to say hi to the stream or not? Because you're wearing mascara.
I am.
Okay, Tracy's.
Okay.
And you're wearing lipstick.
I am.
You're fancy.
I'm fancy. Hello, the people. I missed you. I don't know what to say. She just kind of threw me on stream. How's everyone been? I'm not making anything. Sorry. Next Wednesday, I'm gonna be doing the sale all by myself. So come see. Yeah, it'll be awesome. I'll be awesome. I'm not scared. Totally scared, but it'll be okay because I've got my people. I have not murdered anyone in the face, actually. Who was I supposed to murder in the face? I mean, Allison keeps threatening herself on my behalf, but that's not... Yes, big discounts that day.
Alright, the ring is now black like Corvus's soul.
Woo!
Okay, so... Alright, so this is what liver sulfur patina does to silver. It turns it a really nice gunmetal color. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my steel wool again, and I'm just going to lightly hit the high points so that we get, and I'm going to buff the ring because unfortunately if you don't put some kind of sealant on it, the oxidized won't stay on the ring as completely black. But see how it's a little bit more of a moody silver now? I did turn it black Corvus. Chemicals are awesome. But unless you seal it, it won't stay. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to create kind of an antiqued silver look here with my steel wool. Corvus immediately runs out and buys torch. Clean out the inside. Alright, and then I'm going to do one more step, and then I'm going to set my stone. Alright, the last thing I'm going to do is, if I have one, do I see you? Come here. I'm going to grab a polishing pad.
Oh, you have one?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay. Because I actually know where some are over here.
That's exciting. No, I have one. It was just being elusive. So many random bits of thingies. Okay, so I'm going to take a polishing pad, and I'm just going to just bling up the shiny areas just a bit more. So that's going to add just even a little bit more shine onto the surface. And I had a great instructor once say that a piece of jewelry doesn't look finished unless something on it is shiny, which I realize isn't everybody's cup of tea, but it is true. I think, like, the whole thing doesn't have to be shiny, but as long as, you know, if nothing on it's shiny, then it kind of looks unfinished. Okay, so now it's time to set our stones, and then the ring in honor of Corvus shall be complete. So I'm going to go ahead, I think, and do the little amethyst first. So I'm just going to drop that into the setting. You want to make sure that it winds up in there with the rounded part upright. Okay, don't put it rounded part down. That is not how it goes. Make sure it's in there. Get in there. There we go. Alright, so you want it in there nice and level. And then you're going to take your prong pusher. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push that bezel down all around the stone. And with a wide ring like this, it doesn't work so great on a ring clamp. So what I usually do is I'll throw it on my ring mandrel. And just... Oh, crap!
What?
It was not soldered on there well, and it fell off.
Oh no!
Okay, so at this point, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to finish this ring on stream because I'm getting tired. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to continue this project tomorrow on Freeform Friday because I am streaming from the store, so I can do a torch project. So what needs to happen now is I need to just, okay, so this little piece here, this is a goner, okay, this is toast, this little amethyst, and its setting are done. I did lose the flower too, Laura, you're right. So this is actually good. This is really, really good that this happened in the way that it did. The whole setting came off, and that I hadn't set the labradorite yet. So tomorrow, so what's going to happen is I'm going to need to solder this back on, solder the flower back on, then I'm going to re-pickle, re-buff, re-oxidize, and hopefully finally set my stones. So sorry, this is going to be a to be continued stream, but at 2 hours after a full work day, I think Heather and I are about done for the night. So to be continued tomorrow at 6 p.m. on our Freeform Friday stream. So yeah, stay tuned to see what happens next. Also, I didn't even know where the heck the flower went. But once again, this is what I always say to my students is if it's gonna break, you want it to break now. Because if I'd already set those stones, I would literally have had to pull them back out of the settings, which damages the settings, and, you know, in order to repair the ring, and it's just a huge pain. So this is actually better, believe it or not. So thanks everyone for hanging out with me on my Same Bird channel. So I will finish Corvus's ring tomorrow, and I will also try and make a burb, but the burb ring may wind up being tomorrow's burb. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us for wow, 2 whole hours tonight on the Beading Dreams stream. Y'all are awesome as always. Thank goodness for caffeine. So I'm Allison from Beading Dreams in Dallas, Texas. We are an actual brick and mortar retail bead store. We're here on Lovers Lane in Dallas, and we are here to feed your need to bead 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday from 1 to 6. If you are, thank you, Corvus. If you're not local in Dallas, you can find us on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream, 5 times a week with complimentary tutorials. We stream Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time, plus Thursdays at noon, and live merchandise sales every Wednesday and Saturday at 7:30 p.m. So good night, friends. Thank you all so much again for hanging out with us, and we will finish this ring on Freeform Friday tomorrow on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream at 6 p.m. Central. Everyone take care. We'll see you later. Bye.